welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to talk to you about how I bought my first house and how I could have done it better. I learned a lot and I'd like to help others out with that information now. So the first place that I went wrong was going with the wrong realtor. I didn't interview and I just went with 2 referrals. I tried both of them out. The first one was pretty professional. She had a long line of experience, but she wasn't showing me like a ton of houses, so I thought that meant she wasn't very active and wasn't very diligent. So I went with the other realtor because she was showing me houses very frequently. But there's a lot more involved with finding a realtor. A good sign to me now is a realtor who's been doing it for a long time. However, this realtor had just gotten into it. She also referred people to me that worked for her. So an inspector who worked for her looked at my house and told me what they thought of it. And she was an architect in her past, so she more so noted the architectural issues with the house, but she did not note very much about the plumbing and electric, which ended up being the most expensive and ridiculous parts of my house. A lot of contractors told me this is the worst house they'd ever seen. And yeah, that was my house. So that was my first home buy. I put all the money I had for it in the house at the time. It was very scary to be told something like that, hence why I'm telling you my story now. It was a house flipped house, and that meant that the person who lived there before it had only had it for a year and had fixed it up during that year, had pretty much put improvements on top of the face of really awful bones of a house. So it's all fresh white paint and new appliances and some like nice little bells and whistles that he added on top of terrible bones that needed a lot of help and support. And of course, as a first-time home buyer, you have to be extremely prepared, but the kinds of problems that were going on in the house were just kind of weird and caught a lot of us off guard here. The main thing I should have noted were all the red flags that I'm going to say here. So the inspection report was pretty thick. There was a lot of architectural weird stuff about it, just like you could tell the previous owner, the house flipper, had done a lot of these repairs himself. And he'd done them haphazardly and quickly. There was a lot of like unfinished stuff and weird stuff about the house, and that should have sent me running. But in Portland's intense housing market in 2016, before the house prices started really going up, I was just trying to get in somewhere, and I thought I was being smart because I was looking in fall, and that tends to be when the prices are down a little bit. But it also means there's less inventory out there. I was just kind of getting desperate after 4 months of looking for houses, and I was like, I think this is it. But so I'll just briefly touch upon all the issues here. There was plumbing issues, electric issues, landscaping issues, there were DIY issues, weird windows, really not great realtor or inspector, and the upstairs was extremely hot, and there were some I just couldn't fix on the house because it was so old. So I will get into all of those. Stay tuned. And if you're enjoying this video, please give it a like and subscribe. My whole channel is really all about just trying to teach people things I wish I knew before I made mistakes. So yeah, I bought a house flipped house, and I knew it was house flipped. I could see in the records, and you can always look up your house, look at the records, look at who bought it, who sold it, all of that stuff. I ended up having $60K in home repairs in the first year and a half of buying my house, when I thought it was move-in ready. The track record of the house was a lot of mortgages were taken out, and less money from the previous homeowner means that they didn't really have a whole lot of options to upkeep it, make sure it's maintained properly. And that sucks. The house flipper then bought it for a great deal and then just slapped some pretty repairs on it, had this whole list of improvements, and I did not know what was behind those walls until I actually bought it. And a big reason that I didn't know is because the inspector couldn't even find the plumbing access door. It turns out that the porch outside was built over the plumbing access door. So you would have to take out the stairs to access it, in which case inspectors aren't allowed, so that would just be kind of like an as-is kind of buy. And that's not what you want to buy. But, not knowing that information, all other things were looking like doable, changeable, fixable. I knew I needed a new roof, but I didn't know there were 3 layers of roofing under this weird jerry-rigged DIY roof that someone did. So all repairs end up costing more when the house was DIY'd and improperly done before. And that's a huge issue. That makes it a lot more expensive to buy a house. Just know what you're getting into there. Going into the plumbing a little bit more, the basement toilet, it was an electric toilet. And I'd signed a disclosure for this without any information from my realtor or inspector about it. I don't recall even knowing that it existed. It was very confusing, but they had me sign this disclosure. And during the inspection, the inspector even noticed that there was a plug coming out of a hole in the wall and just being plugged into a socket outside of that wall. And she had no idea what that was and was like, yeah, I don't know, just hire an electrician and you'll work it out. And the electrician down the line still didn't know what it was. Turns out that was the electric toilet that I signed the disclosure for. Oh, it just ended up being such a costly repair. I hired a plumber that didn't know what he was doing. He ended up just taking out some of my wall that didn't need to be taken out. I repatched it myself, which I'm proud of. Um, and then we had to keep finding it. So it wasn't in the wall. So we went down to the ground and I had to hire excavators to take that out. And they found it. They also found the shower leaking into it. So I had to replace the shower. When they took out the broken shower, they saw that the walls were moldy behind that. So we had to take out the walls. And behind that is illegal electric work. And they can't finish a job until they fix all these things. So they had to fix the illegal electric work. And so the price is just going up and up and up and up and up. And this tiny little bathroom ended up costing me $16K. It's just sad how much it cost. And the plumbing issues didn't stop there. Once they were working on it, they found that the weird downstairs kitchen that has like appliances mounted onto like tile platforms, and it's just kind of a weird kitchen already. They found that the kitchen plumbing was all just going into the yard French drain style. And underneath the house, the pipes that connect those pipes to each other were just open. It was like a hose going into a pipe with no seal or anything around it. So it's just splattering all over the house. Like, it was crazy. I believe that concludes all the plumbing issues. Then we can get into the electric. Outside the house, there was illegal electric work, and I didn't know that. So when a tree randomly fell on some of my wires in winter, because my house was just surrounded by pine trees, then I had to pay out of my own pocket for that wiring to be fixed, when usually the city just pays for acts of God like that. When a tree just randomly falls on, your electric work, they repair it for you. The landscaping of the house, I could tell right away, needed a lot of help. There were railroad ties in the backyard, which leach toxic chemicals into the dirt, so you can't plant anything that you would eat in the dirt. Thankfully, railroad ties, people will just buy them from you and haul them out for you. The whole front yard was this weird sod that, sod is just like rollout grass, but because it was surrounded by pine trees and tons of them, the debris would rain down and that creates too much acidity in the soil for the grass to grow properly. So I had to take all of the grass out, which I should have done with a machine, but I literally did with this kick push tool, which just about killed me to just take out that amount of grass. And I put in mulch. Then I put in cylinders in part of the yard for creating garden beds, and I moved the garden in the back of the house to the center of the yard to get more light. I ended up just making some homemade garden beds that would be organic. Pine trees are kind of a pain in the butt to live under. Not only can they just collapse and fall sometimes, but also they rain their debris down like crazy. And so I had to clear out my gutters twice a year, every single year. You probably won't run into this, but if your house is surrounded by a certain type of plant or tree, it's something to keep in mind, the type of maintenance that you're gonna have to do for your house and for your yard because of those plants. Looking back, I am very frustrated I didn't notice all the jerry-rigged stuff. I instead thought, oh, the person was just trying to make it a better house. But now I know. Looking back, I really wish I didn't care so much about what things looked like on the surface and more so cared about the track record, the inspection report, and any red flags that I was feeling and determining, because that would have stopped me from buying it. I definitely knew this house was really weird because it had two opposite window panels just fixed into the wall, and you could slip paper through the center. It didn't open, the window didn't open, it was just kind of situated in the wall. And once I bought the house and started fixing that window, it wasn't installed properly. Usually windows are like Legos and you can kind of pop them in and out behind the molding. But when we took out the molding of this one, we found that it was just glued into the wall. So we had to take out the wall, which is more expensive. The problem with buying weird DIY houses is that you have to spend more money repairing them than you think. it's not easy to predict how much it's going to cost to repair because it's not a predictable situation. And by the time I was getting through all of these random repairs, I was talking to my realtor a lot and I was like, what's going on? And eventually she just stopped talking to me, and then I found out that she'd quit and I was pretty upset that I just trusted her. And, thinking back, she really did just move to the area. She didn't spend that much time here. So it wasn't like a good decision on my part, basically. But it's just important that you all know to really go with somebody who's trustworthy and in it for the long haul. Some other smaller issues with the house were going on too, like for example, the upstairs is a renovated attic and the downstairs is a renovated basement. And so those two floors hadn't always had people living in them. It wasn't efficient. It's not good for the environment to have a house that's just constantly draining your electric like that anyway. And there's no forced air. Instead, there was baseboard heat, and baseboard heat no one warned me about, but is extremely expensive. So when I turned that on, it ended up costing me $500 in the first month of living there. And, it was winter, but at the same time, I was only one person in one area of the house. And I ended up getting mini splits instead. So after all of this was said and done, I had fixed up the house. I made it a lot better place. I learned a lot. I did end up making my money back that I invested into the house repairs, so I was really grateful of that. But it did take a lot of work to make it a better house. And I needed a lot of community support. I had my neighbor helping me, I had friends helping me. I had to dig myself out of this situation every day. I learned a ton, and I'm very grateful. I definitely would not suggest buying a house-flipped house, going with a realtor who doesn't have a lot of experience, buying a house that has weird landscaping or weird jerry-rigged issues, or has a really weird track record. Those are the main things that I think I learned from the situation. I'm hoping that you got a lot out of this video because I messed up, and at the same time, I want to help others learn, how to buy a good property and what to look out for, what are the red flags. I would just say do things by the book. Make sure you have everything checked off your list that you should do as a proper home buyer. And I'm talking do all the things right, spend the money to do all the things right, inspect it properly. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, definitely give it a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.